Hi everyone, welcome to Unapologetically You. We are pleased to welcome our next guest, John Fernandes. John is a senior lecturer in exercise physiology at Hartpury, and he currently leads BSc Sport and Exercise Science degree. Prior to his lecturing at University of Chester, he completed his PhD, which examined the fatigue and recovery responses to resistance exercise in trained middle-aged males. John's recent research has focused on velocity-based training, particularly seeking to explore the reliability and agreement of wearable accelerometers and linear position transducers. His other research interests include exercise-induced muscle damage and aging. John has recently been appointed to BASES Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Committee, and he's heavily involved in these issues with sport and exercise scientists. So welcome, John. Thank you so much for taking time to chat to us on this podcast. And also I'd like to remind our audience that we are missing our wonderful host, Kelly, as she tackles her house renovations and moving home. So I hope I can do her proud on this one in her absence. I wanted to get you on this podcast because there are many companies and corporations and communities attempting to adopt new strategies into looking at incorporating equality, diversity and inclusive roles on the back of the Black Lives Matter big thing that's going on social media and around the world.
Yeah.
But this includes being a part of a new committee formed by BASES. So could you explain a little bit more about what that includes? What does it mean for you to be a part of that?
Yeah. First of all, thanks for having me on. It's really good to be on the podcast. So, yeah, I think in terms of like what the organisations are doing at the moment, is a kind of really positive movement generally in terms of kind of organisations, institutions, national government bodies, etc., just trying to promote equality and diversity. I think a bit of the cynic in me thinks that a lot of it has come off the back of the recent intensity of the Black Lives Matter movement. And I think, some organisations were obviously kind of doing things before, but maybe stepped up the intensity a bit, which, on one level sucks because it took, a guy getting killed over 9 minutes, for that to happen, which is a bit.
Or an accumulation of those events, right?
Yeah.
And he's not the only one, and he's probably.
Yeah, I think that just kind of, that event, I think just kind of triggered the intensity that we have now, because for whatever reason, I'm not sure, there were other similar examples where, videos and stuff, but yeah. But I think it's really important, and I suppose kind of regardless of the kind of motive, there's a lot of positive change happening. Like you mentioned, BASES setting up an equality, diversity and inclusion committee, which I now sit on, and for me, personally, that feels really good because I have I'm obviously an ethnic minority or whatever social categorization it is. So for me, that's really positive to see that within an organization that I'm a part of and is the key organization in my area. But obviously to be able to sit within that organization and make steps towards change. Mm-hmm. And I think I, along with the other members on the committee, have a kind of space where we can actually do some really good things now. So I feel really positive about it.
Cool. And what are the next steps? What are the, or can you not say? Is it something that you can divulge in terms of what the next steps the committee is formed for and what you can accomplish within that?
Yeah. So we had our kind of first meeting last month, and one of the first things we done really was just to see where BASES is at in terms of the kind of various level, various aspects of EDI. So kind of off the back of that, we obviously, like most organisations would and should be doing, you kind of just rank yourself and determine what metrics you need to kind of assess and what our kind of key aims are. All that stuff's kind of in the terms of reference, so it's all right for me to say. and kind of just determining, like I said, kind of what metrics we need to identify. So kind of, I suppose it's one of the first steps in the process is, like with anything, you do a kind of needs analysis, like working with an athlete.
Yes.
You do a
Yeah,
needs
I was just
analysis
going to
to see
ask
what
that.
you're
Were
at.
you, going to do that?
Yeah. So we've just done that with a kind of a framework and just edited it as well for kind of bases specific to our organisation. So that was really positive, and we've kind of got some things we need to do off the back of that, and we've got another meeting coming up in the next couple of weeks, so we'll kind of make things kind of determine what we need a bit more of.
Yeah.
And one of the first things that we actually done was to recruit for 2 student representatives. So we were actually, all the members on the committee were professional members, so but we didn't actually have any student members. So for us, that's quite important, you know, saying we're a diverse community as well actually involves having that. But I think, you know, just setting our goals in terms of what we can achieve in the short term, what are the quick wins that we can do, and then what are the things that are going to take a number of years, because, you know, within an organization and kind of globally as well, there's things that you can do which will have kind of instant change. So like diversifying marketing material, for example, it's a very quick win. It's something that's, as a non-marketer, perhaps very easy to do. There's probably there is a whole load of background stuff to do it, but there's obviously things which are going to be more ingrained in societal issues, maybe more ingrained in the organization, that are going to take a lot longer to actually change. So for example, one of the things we spoke about quite a lot was actually our student conference. What can we do for the next generation of sports scientists coming through? How do we make a kind of better platform for them? How do we ensure that they kind of stay within sport? For those who are from underrepresented groups, you know, how many positive role models are they seeing that they can go, actually, well, you know, there's a pathway for me. Like, tall she's speaking, she looks like me. That means that there's a pathway for me, as opposed to having a bunch of people who don't look like you, and you just kind of, I mean, universal you here, like you just kind of thinking, right, well, what's the point of me being in sport?
Yeah, definitely. And that goes for athletes as well as coaches, but especially in this scenario, in the coaches arena, if we can find people who we can resonate with, who have similar backgrounds, yet similar upbringings, we aren't to know that until we get to know them as people, but all their stories, even if it's highlighted. But it's definitely that first engagement of, they look like me. And a lot of people have spoken out in the social media realm regarding Hollywood, and actors have actually said, I grew up without a Latino to look up to, and when I saw a Latino on my TV screen, it was momentous. You know, it was something that I had a pathway to, but if they can do it, I can do it. And whether they were male or female did not matter for them, but the fact that they were proud to have a part of their ethnicity on the forefront of social media, or on the forefront of the pinnacle of where they wanted to go. And I feel like it's the same with athletes, it's the same with actors, it's the same with coaches. And it's nice that you're taking small steps as well as looking at the bigger goal, because I feel like sometimes organizations can get so caught up in the, what can we change right now, and then they lose the long-term objective, because everybody wants to make a change now, right? But we have to understand that it will be the next generation who will actually have to change everything. And even educating may seem like a long drawn out process, but we need to put the legwork in now. So yeah, it's fantastic that you're already doing that, and diversifying by including students as well. So I think that's definitely important, that you've got everybody across the board, which is great. And there's a lot of organizations who are trying to change like their boardrooms and the people who are making influential decisions to include some diversity in that. But you and I spoke about this before, and I just wanted to ask you a question on the back of that, where, you know, being a person who ticks those boxes when it comes to being ethnically diverse or a female, how do you feel when companies are attempting to provide that tick box role when it's crucial for social media, but many qualified people may come from a particular class or background. Are we filling the criteria, or is it a progressive change? Like, is it positive that we are accepting people in the boardrooms in high-end positions, so they are giving us their experience and their thoughts and representation on it?
Yeah, just to go back to kind of what you said and like kind of Hollywood and that.
Yeah.
I think like what we kind of forget sometimes in sport is that the issues that we have aren't specific, or some of them are, but the vast majority of them aren't actually specific to sport. These are societal issues.
Yeah.
It's just that within our kind of area or in our industry or whatever, like we have these specific issues, but really, you know, like you said, the role model things, like it's a global issue, really. It's a societal issue. So in terms of that and the kind of like tick boxing thing, I'm kind of quite cynical with these things, so I'll just throw that in there first. But like, if that was actually happening to the degree that people think it is, we'd have a lot more diversity in organizations. So, you know, people, like, one of the things we're trying to get to is a diverse kind of, say, I don't know, a diverse group of lecturers, for example. But people can't complain about tick boxing if you go to an organization and everyone in that organization is a white male, because there's clearly not been any tick boxing. Yeah. So it's I think the way people perceive it is that as a strategy, it's a lot more aggressive than it actually is. Regardless, I don't think it's a good strategy. I think if you're picking someone just because you want a South Asian female, or I don't know, you want like a black male in your organization without actually looking at their credentials, you're shooting your organization in the foot just by tick boxing. It also, I'm going off the assumption here, and probably holds true for everyone, that the vast majority of people who are underrepresented groups have faced some hardship that they've had to overcome to get to the position that they're in. Now, what it does is but just by employing someone because of the kind of get that tick box, it kind of devalues what they've had to go through. Like, it makes a bit of a kind of a mockery of all the kind of hardship and how hard they've had to work, to just say, well, actually, you didn't need to do that. We're just going to kind of sign you up anyway. But, you know, on the idea of kind of quotas, I actually don't mind it. If you're saying that, okay, this is your essential and desirable criteria for a job, and you've got a bunch of people and they all meet that, and you're like, well, actually, our organization kind of looks like this. And we've got 5 people, and we actually, you know, we've not got any females. Like, we actually need some representation here. Why would you not pick the female? You know they can do the job because they've interviewed well, they've met all the criteria.
Yeah.
And you've probably got that added bonus as well of them being able to bring experiences that the males can't. I mean, if you're working, if you're at a club and you have female teams in there, why would you not have female coaches? Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm never going to be able to resonate with a female struggle because I'm a male. I can read all the books I want. I can talk to all the females that I want, but I don't have that experience to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And wholeheartedly, your experiences, for example, will be a lot more valuable when working with female athletes than mine. Like, how can I talk about certain issues that I've never actually faced? And I can try and apply them in some way, but ultimately, that female is going to do a better job than I will.
Yeah, and even going off the thread just a touch, it's finding the correct female who is willing to participate in that sport or dynamic or atmosphere. That sometimes, it's great to be part of a boys' club, and we have to compete for our roles more so than other males. And, you know, great coaches have actually verbalized that they have to do above and beyond to try and get themselves recognized. And it's quite a familiar theme amongst female S&C coaches, from what I'm hearing, but also from my personal experience. But it basically just means it isn't just a boys club, but looking at people's experiences, whether you're male or female, like having a role model, for example, it doesn't matter whether it's a male or female, if it's a different perspective, you know. And it's great to have a ethnically diverse or a female on your board or a part of your team, but at the end of the day, it is about whether you are qualified, but it's nice to have the added bonus, just as you said earlier, to have that experience. But it's just, sometimes females won't apply for roles, or they think, you know, oh, I'm not going to get it because of this sport. So it's trying to tackle those issues too. And this is where it's, like you said earlier, it's more of a long-term goal in that sense, as well as a short-term agenda.
Yeah, so I think with that as well is that like the opportunities are there, but so are the barriers. Now, if you're right, the opportunity is there to apply for a role, but like I've done it in the past as well. Like when I've been applying for jobs, like you look at the organisation and you're like, I don't stand a chance. Like why would I do that? Like, you know, so you know those barriers are still there, and I'll openly admit that as someone who's confident and, you know, I think I have a decent CV, like I think so, like, and I will still not, like, or in the past at least, I wouldn't apply for jobs because I was aware of those barriers. And, you know, what's the point of spending an hour and a half on an application when you're not gonna get it anyway?
But that's not the whole truth, though, is it? In terms of, you've encountered disappointments where you have had a strong CV and you have strong experiences, but didn't you say before that you hadn't ended up getting offered a position?
Oh yeah, 100%. Like, I mean, I've applied for jobs where I know I meet the criteria and kind of like, you know, like my like I meet all the essential and desirable criteria, and, you know, I've gone way above, and I've not even got an interview. You know, I've not even been shortlisted. Right. Well, okay, can I get some feedback? Yeah, it's not the right fit. You need a bit more of this, and well, I have that. It's there. Read it. You know, so that's problematic, and every kind of minority person that I've spoken to has had similar issues. I won't name the company. This was back when I was a PhD student, but I applied for a job once, and it was a company that just constantly recruits, so their recruitment is always open. But I applied for a job and didn't get an interview or anything, and then I applied again and put that there. I was white British, and unfortunately, kind of with my name, I can kind of, well, to some degree, John, I can get away with that. And I got an interview. I was like, I applied a few days later for the same job role, and I've suddenly got an interview. Like, what's up with that? And, you know, there'll be people listen to it and be like, oh, well, you know, maybe they just read something wrong, whatever. Well, this keeps happening. Like, do you know what I mean? This isn't just a one-off thing. This is something that's happened before. And, you know, it's those, it's something as simple as that. Now, you know, I'm lucky in that sense that I can kind of get away with that. But there's a lot of people that will change their names on applications, or, you know, they'll westernize their names and so on and so forth, just to be able to get those opportunities. And the issue there as well is that, right, you might get an interview, but as soon as you go to the interview, they realize that you look a certain way, and then you've then got to overcome that barrier. But the hope is that you can just get the interview, and then you can sell yourself enough to make them go, oh, right, well, that person looks like that, but they're actually pretty good.
First impressions always make a difference. So if you've already lied, or you've made a negative impression by, well, actually being deceitful, that could go against you when you do walk in. So as you just said earlier, there is so many barriers that you do have to overcome, but having that explanation and story, thank you so much for being honest with us as well and sharing that.
No worries. I just won't say the organisation.
Oh no, we don't expect you to shout out who it is. But the funny thing is, it's like you don't realize that's happening. Like you don't realize, because how many people would actually change their name and apply for the same job? Do you know what I mean? Like you were quite astute to do that, but not everybody will do that. And there are very it's just being passed over, isn't it? And it's just gone, right, you know what, forget it, move on.
Sorry,
like,
I changed my ethnicity on there. I didn't change my name. I changed my
no,
ethnicity.
but in terms of people change their name and
obviously
the ethnicity on the boxes, but we don't know how much they do it. But actually you changing your ethnicity on the box and having a clear indication that with one you didn't get it and with one you did get an interview, that's actually quite, it's not a nice feeling, you know, to know that there is something that you cannot control, yet people are using that against your application or you actually taking a chance. But yeah, it's not great. But we talked about earlier about role models, and obviously having a diversity of backgrounds and genders and experiences is definitely something that young coaches or athletes can look up to, especially in the S&C industry or in any industry for that matter. I think people aren't aware that we need to deliver and succeed at a higher cost. We as in being ethnically diverse, or me being female. That I've experienced having to go above and beyond, and I know we've talked about it earlier, that you've had to go above and beyond to try and exceed expectation, or even on the CV or experiences and etc. But those who aren't female or those who aren't ethnically diverse, can you explain a little bit more about some of the obstacles that you've experienced in S&C and why it was important for you to be a part of the BASES Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Committee? What did it mean to you, not only to encounter those disappointments, but also to overcome them and be a part of something so big?
Yeah, so kind of, I think for kind of like what I do, I think I'm relatively young. So like when I kind of, you know, one of the reasons why I have a beard is to make me look older at times, like, or at least in the past. Now I'm not so much, but certainly like when I was at the start of my career, I'd like to make sure I had a beard, because otherwise, you know, you'd walk into spaces with like people a lot older than you, you know, double your age, and you wouldn't get taken seriously because they think, oh, all right, well, you're just young, you don't really know anything.
Yeah.
Or like, you know, you walk into a room and you're the only person that looks like you. And, you know, within kind of S&C, I think it's that sometimes I think you need to look a certain, not that I'm suggesting you need to look a certain way, but if you don't look a certain way, i.e. if you kind of don't look like you have massive biceps or whatever, like, you know, then like people might discriminate against you because of that, because, you know, like S&C is just dominated by this kind of idea of masculinity, which is entirely problematic for a number of reasons. But if you kind of don't look a certain way, so, you know, when I first started doing S&C, I was 63 kilos, and I was tiny, and like, you know, I think I was relatively smart and knew what I was doing, but kind of if you don't look a certain way, then, you know, you might get discriminated. And I think one of the kind of like things that gets compounded with, you know, being of like my kind of like heritage is that like you're not deemed as kind of strong. You know, there's this idea that, you know, Asian people are smart, but, you know, not very good practically. So kind of that gets compounded in this S&C realm now. You know, I'm pretty sure I can do every lift well. Do you know what I mean? I can certainly coach every lift pretty well. Like, so, you know, why am I not getting listened to? And I think there's that idea behind that where, you know, people don't even respond to the stuff that's coming out your mouth. Really, they just see you and your skin color and what you look like and whatever, without actually listening to the content of what you say. I think kind of like from an academic setting, sometimes you end up like, I've certainly done it, like to get listened to, you talk a bit louder, you talk a bit more assertively, because you have to do that, because, you know, pretty much every room I go into, I'm the only person that looks like me. So, you know, I need my opinion to be taken seriously. So you end up saying it in a different way. You know, I'm from North London, and, you know, I have a talk with a London accent, and I kind of like de-urbanize my accent at times to get away from that, because you don't want to be seen in the wrong light, or you know that, you know, if you mess up once, then you're always going to be seen in that light.
Yeah.
To be honest, I think academia is a bit more kind of like cutthroat with stuff like that, because there's always this thing where someone knows more than you, and, you know, you'll always be the young lecturer or whatever, at least for a few years anyway, until I get older.
Yeah, that's quite
Sorry,
difficult.
I went gone off on a bit of a rant there.
No. I was going to say that's actually really interesting, because as you were talking, it reminded me of just being judged. It's being judged before people got to know you. And as you walk into the room, people are judging you on your academic background, on your diversity, on your ethnicity, on your age. And that is all judgment. And it's just like, we need to call those things out. Like, we need to call our friends out that actually, you know, that's not right to say, or that's inappropriate. And I feel like there needs to be a bit more calling out, but it's really difficult in areas where you are the new person, or there isn't anyone else like you. You do want to make a good impression, and sometimes, I don't know if you do, but I know I've gone into situations where I've just not said anything, because I'm like, well, is this a battle I want to take out? Is this something that I want to say, or shall I just reserve my own opinions and backing myself up in this scenario, because it's not a big deal. Like, I don't need to speak up on this, but if it comes later on in my career, when I get older, when I get more experience, when I get higher up, then you can kind of say something. It's almost like, know your room, know your audience, know where you can kind of take it, and it's just being careful, but not to the point where it's abusive or it's sexually abusive. Like, those things, it's almost like you need to know where to draw a line and say no. But this happens again in all industries where females have had to get ahead, and they've taken those things, or they've had to take abuse, and that's where the judgment has carried on. Like, I remember being given a statement of, or being told, oh, so who did you sleep with to get this role? And I was totally aghast. I was like, are you kidding me? I've worked so damn hard to get where I am, and you've just whittled it down to sexual favor. And I was just so furious and so shocked. I had no comeback. Like, and obviously with that coach, he was quite higher up, and there's me, and I'm like, oh, I don't know, like, what do I say? And so
it's so problematic, because like you know, you're certainly not the first woman that's told me they've had that, like, almost word for word, like kind of experience. But like, when kind of what you're saying about like knowing your audience, sometimes like you go into a room and just like, oh, well, we know from the off you might as well just shut up and save yourself, because otherwise, if you end up saying something, you're going to get frustrated. And then like the other thing there is like, you've had that experience, and I've kind of had like experience, obviously not like that, but like experiences of my own of discrimination. And you kind of just wonder, right, well, who do I speak to? Because you go and look at HR, and HR look a certain way, and, you know, there's no representation there, or there's no representation in management. So what do you actually end up doing? You just end up kind of venting to yourself and venting to the people, you know, because you can't really say anything, because nothing's going to happen. So that's kind of like really tough. And I think, you know, fortunately, I have a kind of like a really good support network around me, where I can just like, you know, my two best friends just get loads of stories and just like text me like, this has happened. Like, it's just, you know, it's a venting space, or like I go to like my family, and, you know, just like, it's just, you use that as kind of like your coping mechanism. But
Yeah.
I think where I kind of, and actually I spoke to Dr. P. Olasuga, who's up at Sheffield earlier this week, about kind of like, because I look up to him in terms of like, he speaks out a lot about things. Like, it's a kind of level that I kind of want to attain to, because I will sometimes just silence my own voice just for the sake of, you know, self-preservation or whatever. But I think where we kind of agreed, like, we both draw the line is when that moral issue comes in, where you think you have like a moral obligation. So, you know, if it's something that's content driven and it's something to do with, I don't know, some sort of process within your organization or something, well, you can probably just, there's no morality behind it, or no morality associated with it. But when it's actually, you know, someone, you know, like a male keeps speaking over a female, like in your place, then that's a time where you actually have to use your privilege and just go, well, actually stop, let her finish.
Yeah.
You keep speaking over her, let her finish. Or, you know, no, she made a really good point there, I think we should take this ahead, or like those examples there. So I think that's kind of like where I probably, like, I do it quite a lot actually. And if I kind of see something online or wherever that I just don't agree with, that I think, you know, I always put myself in the position of like my kind of students, and like, all right, well, kind of, if they've seen that and that's making them silence their voice, or, you know, that's going to make them shy away from continuing on with sports sciences or something, or like S&C or whatever, that's where I have to go in and say something and just, you know, go, well, actually, you're wrong because of this. Yeah.
Nice. No, I like that. I think I came up with two thoughts as you were talking. It's kind of saying that you do have to watch what you say, who you say it with, and who you obviously vent with in early doors. Because I think with anyone, it's you have to try and find your feet and ground yourself in an area where you are new. But I'm such a firm believer now, obviously being in the industry for a little while and coaching for a little bit longer, it just makes me think that we have to be the change that we want to see in this world, right? So if we have both been in scenarios where we couldn't speak our minds, or we didn't feel it appropriate because we were quite young or not really taken seriously at that early stage in our career, it's up to us. If we do want to see a difference, if we want to make a difference, it's up to us to keep ranking up higher. And yeah, okay, we've been quiet in certain scenarios and situations. And there's some stories that are coming out now that I would never have said like 10 years ago. But if you are going up and proving yourself as a practitioner, as a coach, as an academic, that it gives you a little bit more authority and being a role model for others in terms of how can you create a safe space? How can we engage young people to find mentors who then can speak to them and say, look, we get it, we understand you. And it's just opening up those safe spaces so they continue pursuing that goal. The worst thing would be that they give up on their dream of being a coach, of, you know, being in the professional industry because of something that's happened or something that they couldn't really understand. But if they've got a mentor or a committee or somewhere to go to, I think that that's where we need to rise up. And more of us need to rise up to represent this area. But yeah, it's an ongoing process, isn't it? It's like evolving.
I think kind of what you're saying there as well is just like when you kind of like speak up, kind of on one level you need to make sure that you're secure in terms of your job and stuff like that. Like I'm very fortunate in that kind of my organization, like Hartpury, is really kind of like forward thinking on this, and kind of, like I know I have their support, so like I can kind of afford to speak out like with stuff. But like, you know, certainly would I have done that in my first month there? Probably not, because I've not passed my probation. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
no,
well, at least that's always in the
agree.
back of your mind. Like, and also because when you're new to an organization, you don't know where the line is, and so on and so forth. But I think like I'd encourage as well, kind of any kind of sports scientists, S&C coaches or whatever. But like when I'll just message people or like email them, DM them on social media or whatever, and just say to them, look, thank you for the work that you're doing in terms of speaking out, and like if you ever need someone to speak to, like just drop me a message and come speak to me, and we'll you can vent. I kind of had that within like not a mentor as such, but I kind of had like a support network around me, and I did as well when I was like younger and to start my career, but I didn't necessarily have a mentor that I could speak to someone about those things. So how valuable would that have been to me? Would have been invaluable. So I will be there, and I encourage others to be that kind of mentor as well. And like you said, that keeps people in our industry.
Yeah, definitely. And just on the back of that, and I know you talked about the amazing things that you guys are already doing within the BASES committee, but what changes can BASES or groups such as the UKSCA adopt and grow within the industry to make it more inclusive? What ideas have you, what would you think that they could?
So like BASES obviously created the committee, and UKSCA had put out for an EDI director, which are both kind of like really, really positive moves. I think what's really important about them as well is those people like within the committee and the director sit within the hierarchy. Now, it's all well and good changing your marketing material, for example. I'm not referring to the organisations here, but unless you kind of have change at the top, like you're not really, the change doesn't work from marketing material to board of directors, for example. It works from board of directors down, but it doesn't work the other way. So I'd kind of encourage any organisation really to kind of make those changes up the top as well. I think definitely just highlighting positive role models is such an important one. A guy called Matt Frakes, Dr. Matt Frakes in America, set up this spreadsheet with practitioners and researchers and whatever of color, and like I looked at that list, and like I'm a senior lecturer now, so I'm kind of like maybe in the middle of my career, but I looked at some of the names in there and I was like, damn, I was like, there's role models to me. I was like, there's so many good people of color that are doing things and then look at people like Professor Kevin Hilton, who's like big time professor, and you're like, geez, I can do that. I can be like that, and that's amazing. So I think those are quite simple things, and I think the role model one is really powerful in the sense that there's that emotion that's attached with it, like it kind of gives you a little bit of a buzz inside, and I think those kind of structural changes are really important as well. So the reason why I say that as well is that when we talk about kind of like discrimination and inequality and that, there's obviously like structural things behind the inequality and the discrimination, but we got to remember that we're dealing with numbers, but we're actually dealing with individuals here. So we need to create that emotional response. We need to look after the individual as well, and simple things like role models, I think, do that. Like the structural changes and the background processes aren't going to hit the individuals. I
love that. I'm so glad that you said role models, because we've kind of been tinkering on this whole theme throughout, haven't we, to try and get role models from multiple disciplines, multiple arenas, so then they can provide younger coaches and even coaches now some sort of connect, some sort of go-to area that they can feel safe. So amazing, great answers. Well, thank you so much. So we normally go through quick fires now, so no pressure, we don't have to have too longer answers, but just quick fires about, firstly, what motivates you obviously you've gone quite high up in your professional and academic career now, but what motivates you? What motivates you to get up in the morning and go be fired up for your job?
Oh, it's a weird one. I just enjoy doing what I do, to be honest. I really enjoy teaching. I really enjoy the interaction. I really enjoy what I teach as well on that kind of level. I kind of, with my kind of third years and masters lot, I can't do it so much with the first and second years, but I just go sit on a table and just chat to them about things, and obviously have slides, and it's a bit more professional than that. But it's just that interaction is just so valuable. So that's really enjoyable. Seeing students graduate and progress is amazing. I had a student last year who just kind of really struggled with so many things, and got his degree, and just seeing him and his parents and how happy they were at graduation was just it's just a great feeling. I've one of your students run up to you and hug you and just be thank you for everything. And just not kind of what it does for me, but what it does for them is just amazing. Yeah. And in terms of the kind of EDI stuff, just knowing that I'm kind of at least taking even baby steps to try and make the world a better place, or at least my industry or whatever. Not that I'm that big time that I'm making. I'm not big time enough to make the world a better place. But,
great answers. Yeah. Great answers. I love that. You're inspiring others, you're motivating others, and creating a change in this world. So yeah, that's pretty motivating. What are you reading and listening to at the moment? Give us a deep dive into what you're interested in.
So I'm a big hip hop and Afrobeats fan. My dad was born and raised in Kenya, so I kind of at times I listen to a bit of Kenyan music randomly, and listen to a lot of kind of Afrobeat. So at the moment, I'm listening to Burna Boy, his album Twice as Tall, which is amazing. In terms of what I'm reading, I've just got the last Harry Potter book to finish off reading, but I normally have a couple books at the same time. So I'm just near the end of also finishing Matt Haig's Notes on a Nervous Planet, which is about kind of dealing with kind of stress and anxiety in the modern world. So I'm open about it, but I've had kind of mental health issues and do have mental health issues. So just trying to, that's a self-help and I read, but that's brilliant. It's a brilliant book.
Great. Amazing. Lovely. That's really good, because a lot of people are shy and don't really admit that vulnerable side of them. But as we know, men obviously deal with a lot of mental issues, and actually coming out of that persona and the judgment of, but you're a man, but you're strong, and coming out of those preconceived ideas and just being vulnerable. So yeah, that's a great answer. And for those of you who are listening, I'll put a little note in the description so you'll know what John is referring to in terms of albums and books. So I'll definitely put those in. Okay, so if you would give one piece of advice to another coach listening, what would it be?
I'll give one kind of based off of what we've kind of spoken about today, and that would just be kind of understand your athlete, but not in terms of the kind of physical side of them, or their their biomechanics and stuff, but understand what they're dealing with, understand their kind of their struggles, the barriers they face, and kind of once you understand that, I think you'll inadvertently hopefully start to make things better for them. Understand what they're dealing with.
Amazing. Great piece of advice. And lastly, we ask everybody the same question of, we obviously have a diversity in our guests. Now, they could be coaching background, they could be professional background, it could be mothers or fathers, because we want to understand unapologetically, how are you successful? How have you come to your dream job? Because you don't have to necessarily be at the forefront of social media or a celebrity to be successful, because people enjoy their lives and have become successful in their own merit. So who would you like to hear from on this podcast next? We usually ask our guests to pick someone they would be interested in. So who would that be for you, John?
Can Can I give three or a couple?
Sure, why not?
The
We've
first
already had
one
Michael
is,
Jordan, by the way, so you can't have him.
okay. I'm gonna pick people that are kind of unknown in the kind of sports science field. So one is Shakiba Moghadam, she is a PhD student at the University of Portsmouth, and she researches into mental health in rugby players who identify as women. But she also does some equality, diversity and inclusion stuff with her department as well. But she's really bright, researching into really interesting area and doing some really great stuff. The other one is Nazir Udin, who's looking at concussion in combat athletes. He's at St. Mary's doing some really good stuff there as well. And the other one is my good mate, who I always learn a lot off of, and who I've done my PhD with. But he's great because he's the most chilled out man in the world. John T. Norris.
We'll say that name again.
John T. Norris.
Okay.
So he always gives me a chilled perspective on things when I need it. But yeah, he's.
And what does he do? What is his background?
So he's the head of S&C for Derbyshire County Cricket Club.
Okay, cool.
But he's got a kind of a wealth of S&C experience and incredibly bright. And he's an Excel wizard as well.
Ooh.
Yeah, yeah.
Hard to find people who are passionate about Excel.
He's your man.
Awesome. Me and one of the girls, I remember working, this is back in Mercedes, she loves data entry and she loves like dealing with Excel docs. And during my area manager time, I learned a few things that I'm not a pro, but you know how your pride in your Excel documents just comes across when you use multiple tabs and pages. I'm like, we're fighting with one another. Because she wanted to do the Excel stuff, but I was also wanting to do it. And there would be conflict. So I'm like, look, you love it more. I'm just going to give it to you. I can use my time better somewhere else. But no, it's nice to hear from another Excel passionate enthusiast. So
yeah,
they are incredible guests. I am so glad that you've made us aware of your person who's working in rugby players with EDI. Obviously, that's brilliant. But also combat athletes and county cricket. Amazing guests. So I cannot wait.
Yeah.
We'll have a little conversation after about getting their details, and we'd love to get them on, if not in series 2. And great questions, great answers for them as well, I'm sure. But thank you so much for taking time out to speak to us. And obviously Kelly, in her absence, probably wishes that she was a part of this one too. But it's been so great to hear about your experiences and being honest about what you've been through as well. So thank you so much for providing our audience with this knowledge.
Thank you for having me on and being able to kind of speak about these things. Really, really important that we do. And thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, well, we will speak to you soon then.